pool, a lifeguard pulled me aside and said, "I need you to go to the ER right now." I'd brought my son Liam to the community pool because his mother, my ex-wife, had canceled her weekend visitation again. He was 7 years old with my dark hair and his mother's green eyes. I sat on a plastic lounge chair that was probably older than I was, scrolling through work emails I didn't care about, trying not to think about the bills piling up or the custody hearing scheduled for next month. That's when the lifeguard approached. Young guy, maybe 22, with that build that comes from spending every summer swimming and the kind of tan that suggested this wasn't just a job, but a lifestyle. His name tag said Derek, and he had that serious expression that made my stomach drop before he even opened his mouth. I assumed Liam had done something wrong, broken some pool rule I wasn't aware of, but Derek wasn't looking at my son. He was looking at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He crouched down next to my chair so we were at eye level and spoke quietly, like he didn't want other people to hear. He said he needed me to go to the emergency room right now, that he'd noticed something while I was in the water earlier, and it required immediate medical attention. My first reaction was to laugh because that was absurd. I felt fine, better than fine actually. I'd lost 15 pounds stress dieting through the divorce. I told Derek he must be mistaken, that I was perfectly healthy, but he wasn't smiling. He asked when I'd last seen a doctor, and I had to think about it. Maybe 2 years? 3? I'd been on my wife's insurance until the separation, and I hadn't bothered getting my own yet because it was expensive, and I felt fine. Derek's expression got more serious. He said he was a certified lifeguard and CPR instructor. That part of his training included recognizing medical emergencies, and what he'd observed qualified as an emergency. I asked what exactly he'd observed, feeling my heart rate pick up despite my skepticism. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then pointed at my torso. He said when I'd been swimming with Liam, he'd noticed my ribcage on the right side was significantly more prominent than the left, that my breathing pattern was asymmetrical, and that I had visible distension in my abdomen that hadn't been there when I checked in 2 hours ago. I looked down at myself, at the body I'd been living in for 34 years, and tried to see what he was talking about. My ribs did look a bit uneven maybe, but I'd always been skinny. The abdomen thing was probably just bloating from the gas station burrito I'd eaten for lunch. I told Derek I appreciated his concern, but I was fine, that he was probably seeing things. His jaw tightened, and he pulled out his phone, swiped to the pool's security camera footage from earlier. He showed me a video of myself diving into the pool, and I had to admit the image was unsettling. My right side did look wrong somehow, like the architecture of my rib cage had shifted, and when I surfaced in the video, I could see my stomach was noticeably distended, pressing against my swim trunks in a way that looked more like late pregnancy than bloating, but this was insane. I'd looked normal this morning when I got dressed. Bodies didn't just change shape in a few hours. Derek explained that rapid abdominal distension combined with respiratory asymmetry could indicate internal bleeding, organ failure, or a dozen other conditions that would kill me if I ignored them. He said he'd already called his supervisor who'd agreed this warranted emergency intervention, that they had a legal duty to report potential medical emergencies observed at the facility. I started to argue, to tell him he was overreacting, but then I noticed Liam watching us from the pool. My son's face had that pinched, worried expression he'd been wearing a lot lately, the look of a kid who'd learned too young that adults don't always have everything under control. I realized that whatever this was, even if Derek was wrong, I couldn't risk dismissing it and having something actually be wrong. Liam had already lost his stable family unit. He couldn't lose me too. I told Derek I'd go get checked out, more to make him stop looking at me with that concerned intensity than because I believed anything was actually wrong. He offered to call an ambulance, but I refused. Ambulances were expensive, and I had a car. He insisted that someone else drive me, that I shouldn't be behind the wheel if I was potentially experiencing a medical emergency. I pointed out that my son was here, and I couldn't exactly leave him at the pool. Derek's supervisor appeared then, a woman in her 40s named Gloria, who'd apparently been listening to the whole conversation. She said she'd watch Liam personally, that my son could stay in the shallow end under her direct supervision until I got back, or arrange for someone to pick him up. The fact that they were this insistent made my denial start cracking. Something in their expressions told me this wasn't standard pool liability protocol. They genuinely believed I was in danger. I called my brother Marcus, explained the situation in the vaguest terms possible, and asked if he could come drive me to the hospital. He arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at me, and his face went pale. He asked why the hell I looked like that, why my stomach was sticking out like I'd swallowed a basketball, why I hadn't said anything about being sick. I looked down again, and this time, I couldn't deny it. My abdomen had continued expanding while I'd been waiting. My swim trunks were cutting into my waist now, leaving red marks, and when I pressed on my stomach, it felt hard and wrong, like there was something solid in there that shouldn't be. And what happened next changed everything. Full story is linked below or on my channel.